All right, folks, so this is part 2 of the video. We're going to look at some other 10th gen examples. And, originally I wasn't going to do this, but since we'll say the video ended prematurely, and I'm trying to basically do this one straight take, now we are stuck with doing a part 2 to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull all the other, major motherboard manufacturers that at least I see on the good old Amazon. Like I've said, I stick pretty much with 4 of these: ASUS, Gigabyte, MSI, ASRock, and I've added BioStar. Not that I would buy one of theirs, but hey, they're out there as well. So let's go look at the MSI. So I search for this. Once again, you're going to click on support here. And boom. So before we go into BIOS, let's look at compatibility, see if any of these are different. So this is a little different, and why I'm going through all these different examples for y'all. This is your BIOS version over here, okay? And that's actually the zip file that you would download for the BIOS. You can get it right there. But you see all these end in V20. I had to double check that. I was pretty sure they would. Which is surprising because this guy and at least one other one came out a little later on, right? So some of the manufacturers have different BIOS versions. This one does not show it. So basically, if you bought any of these 10th gen chips, you should probably be good with the base V20 BIOS, okay? Now let's go look at the BIOSes out there. If I can find them, we have to click on support again. All right, so we'll start at the bottom. There you go. There's the baseline Rev V20. And I'm not going to show you how to update the BIOS in this video. Plenty of those on my channel, but this is where you would download it at. First release. Now, what did they change to this motherboard afterwards, okay? Memory compatibility, that can be important. Enhanced CPU memory overclocking capability. So for some of y'all, that is important, right? So, really we talk about hardware compatibility, software compatibility. And then, really between those is stabilization, right? So the computer actually being stable. So it can run some of this stuff, but, maybe at certain points it's no longer stable. And then you've got the security issues that can arise that you need a BIOS update. But so far, 10th gen Intel seems to have done a pretty good job with that. So improve M2 Genie function, add UEFI and CSM items. So, basically inside of your BIOS, there is going to be some additional features that were added. Microcode, firmware, Thunderbolt settings, more improved memory compatibility. So you will see as these manufacturers are increasing RAM speed that occasionally new BIOS update will be made available that will make that RAM actually compatible with the motherboard. And if you decide that you want to buy that RAM, you may need to update the BIOS, otherwise your RAM may run slower. Another improved memory compatibility with V23. More Thunderbolt stuff, secure boot setting revision. So this one almost kind of falls under security, right? Even though it's probably really software related, but this could be an instance of security update for it. Support new audio chipset, so that's hardware, right? And then resize bar function, enhance GPU performance, and update ME 14.1. So that is this MSI one. So you kind of saw examples for really all three things: software, hardware, and some security aspects, reasons why, you know, to update the BIOS. So if you're looking at this and you've bought 11th gen CPU, you would need to come to this website and look for a 11th gen update to this. So obviously it hasn't been done yet. That's down the road, right? Not too far away from having 11th gen CPUs on the market. And just so you can see, it is actually Christmas Day 2020. So within a month or two, I believe, we'll start seeing those 11th gen chips. And somewhere in here, you're going to see a BIOS update. Now, let's just talk 11th gen real quick before we continue on. If you buy this motherboard and are using a 10th gen chip, you'll have two options before you go to 11th gen. One, you can update the BIOS to one that actually says it's compatible with 11th gen, or you can, you know, shut your computer down, disconnect a bunch of stuff, take your CPU cooler off, pull your CPU out, put the 11th gen chip in, put the CPU cooler back on, connect all the other stuff, and then from there see if it actually works. Now, you know, we talked about there's risks with installing a BIOS update. I will tell you from when I went from 8th to 9th gen that most of my 8th gen motherboards, that they started life as an 8th gen motherboard, they worked, I'd say 9 out of 9 with 9th gen chips, to include i3 9100, 9400. That was mainly the ones I was testing with, okay? Now, if it doesn't work, if it doesn't boot up, then you know you'll have to pull your 11th gen chip out, put the 10th gen chip back in, and update the BIOS, all right? Let's move on to an ASRock. This is one that I own. Very disappointed with this motherboard, to be honest with you, mainly because they could have put a second M.2 here and they didn't, but that's another story. All right, so we click on support. Let's look at CPU support list. Now, this is finally an example that shows you if you bought a later 10th gen that you need to do a BIOS update. You see, since BIOS all, this is actually P1.20. I'm surprised they don't say that. Then eventually, P1.50 added compatibility. So we will eventually get this CPU on the channel, and maybe one of these other Celerons. I don't know. We'll see. But you see, these three chips also need that update. Now, whether they do or not, it's another story. But according to ASRock, they do. Let's go over to BIOS. Now, their BIOS is a little different, okay? You will see that you can do a BIOS update through Windows, and you can do it with InstaFlash, which is, you know, via USB. The Windows one does not require you to have a USB. If I remember correctly, you will just open up the file in Windows, and it will do its thing. The InstaFlash, which is my primary way of doing it, is through the BIOS using a USB that is formatted correctly, and then you will do the BIOS update there. All right. So, hence why there's basically two versions in here when you're reading this. Now they have they had their first release, support for base frequency boost. Now this is interesting here, folks, because some of these motherboards you will see you cannot mess with the base frequency. Now, I am kind of curious, honestly, if I have the BIOS update for this on this motherboard. Pretty sure I do. Update ME version, improve memory compatibility, optimize system performance. So, boom, this may help you out. And this doesn't say anything about the additional CPU. You know, ASRock's at times disappointing with their literature, but they really should have added, you know, improved CPU compatibility in here. And so that's what you would get by updating your BIOS for 10th gen chips. Now 11th gen, same as what I talked about with MSI, and honestly the same that would be with Gigabyte Z490. You need to wait till you see a BIOS in here that says it is for either 11th gen chips or 11,000 chips, Intel 11,000 chips. Now, same thing as before. You could try and put the CPU in without updating the BIOS. If it works, everything's good. Worry about updating later. If it doesn't work, then you got to put the 10th gen chip back in and update it. So yours truly is going to make a lot of videos on that most likely, and I got a lot of questions about that, and I kind of got a break from it because most people are now they're in 9th gen and not 9th and 10th and not really asking those questions. But we're eventually going to go 11th gen, and I have bought all these motherboards, and people will ask me if they're compatible right out of the box. So stay tuned for more of those videos. ASUS. Now their website's a little different here, folks. A little bit different. Let's see here. Okay. So a lot of times you'll see you just got to make sure you grab the right support. And it is not that one. I'll tell you, it is this one. They'll take you to two different places. CPU memory support. Let's look at that. CPU support. So they do their BIOS versions differently. You see that 0321, 0321. So that's probably the base one, okay? Now looking at the, if I can find it, i9-10850K 0321, okay? Memory, let's see if they do anything for theirs. They don't tell you anything about BIOS compatibility there. So we're going to move over to driver and utility, BIOS and firmware, okay? Now, let's start at the bottom. Whoop, there ain't a whole lot. Oh, sorry, clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. They actually have wow, they have a lot of BIOS updates. This is, something that might scare you when you see a lot of BIOS updates. Tells you there's some issues. Now, what don't you see here, folks? Not as much information about where you're getting. 0321, base model, nothing shown. Improved system compatibility, improved system performance. So these are all pretty much software. Improved system performance. They don't tell you much anything. None of these are enough of a reason for me to want to update my BIOS. Fixed an issue where the memory vendor name could not be displayed correctly. Doesn't really give you specifics. And whether this is important to you or not is another story. Probably not. So with what MSI, with ASUS for this motherboard has put out, I would pretty much stick at this BIOS. There's nothing that I really saw in here. Specifics. It's not giving me the specifics or a warm and fuzzy that, hey, I need to update. Now, all these right here, they may be reason enough, but they don't describe it enough. So I would say, update this at your own risk. Let's go over to BIOStar. Now, I have never actually looked at a BIOStar motherboard. I've stayed away from them. I bought some BIOStar graphics cards, thought they were junk, and kind of felt like their motherboards are junk. So out of the hundreds and hundreds of motherboards I bought over the years, I have never bought a BIOStar motherboard. So let's look at this CPU support. And they do this, kind of thing here too, where you've got this long ass name. Definitely like Gigabyte's, F5, F4. So it looks like all the same. Even the 1085. So they actually put these in an order that they kind of came out. So they're all supposedly compatible. I'm just curious about memory. Doesn't tell you anything there. Go over to download. And here are the BIOS updates. So they have updated one time. And this may be a reason, for an update for you. If you happen to have a issue with your XMP, let's say your RAM is on their compatibility list. It's supposed to run at 4133, and you're only able to get to 4000. You may need to do this BIOS update to get it to there. But, you have to weigh the benefit versus the risk. Is it worth possibly bricking my motherboard to go from 4000 to 4133? And it may not be. All right. So, same thing here for 11th gen. If you were going to get an 11th gen chip, you would want to see in here description support for 11th gen. And, once again, you have the two routes. Either you install the 11th gen, see if it works, or you, while you have the 10th gen chip in, update the BIOS. All right. So that's going to do it for part 2. I hope you got something out of this. I'll give you my final aspect of this when you're doing a BIOS update, and you'll see this in my videos. Not only do you have to decide whether the benefit outweighs the risk, but you also have to realize what environment you're in. Is it going to be safe to do this BIOS update? Okay, so some places in the world you don't have stable power. You may have, power surge. You may have the possibility of a natural disaster, hurricanes, tornadoes, if there's a lightning storm going on, if you have high winds that could knock over a power line, any kind of chance that you could lose power, it is not a good idea to start a BIOS update, no matter how bad you want to get that computer running. Wait for the weather to clear. Pick a sunny day, that everything's good. Now, if you're able to have a battery backup and surge protectors and all that stuff, probably, that much better, right? But is it necessary? No. But that is the safest route. So, hope you got something out of the video. If you did, please like, please subscribe. Thank you.